Hi everyone, welcome to Better For Us Baking. I sure do love cake. I love all kinds of cake. I'll eat any kind of cake. And when I meet someone that doesn't love cake, I'm determined to get them to love cake. The problem is cake's not that good for you. So what I thought was that I would find a way to make it just a little bit better for us. I'm going to try to make baking not only better for me and better for you, but better for everyone and the environment. Baking, like so many creative endeavors, is defined by relationships. For instance, knowing exactly how much flour to put in a loaf of bread is nearly as useful as understanding the relationship between the flour and the water and the fat and the salt. This relationship is called ratio, and having this ratio on hand is like having the key to the secret treasure. By learning the ratios of your basic recipe, you can take the knowledge and develop an alternative way to make baking better. There's no reason we need to stick to those basic flour, eggs, butter, sugar, salt recipe when making a cake. There are so many more alternatives that we can make it better for us if you have a certain diet. What would happen if we subbed out all-purpose flour for coconut flour or even oat flour? What if we took milk and instead used oat milk? Did you know that you can use aquafaba, the liquid from chickpeas, instead of eggs? Can we take this basic recipe and sub it for all those different alternative ingredients? Do you think the ratios would stay the same if we changed the ingredients? Well, we're going to find out. Now let's talk about oats. Between 50 and 90% of the world's oat production is used on animals. Oats for human consumption are used to produce traditional, functional, and medicinal products. Oats have shown to have health benefits for lowering blood cholesterol, normalizing blood glucose levels, and reducing risk of colorectal cancer. Not only do oats have major health benefits, but they are one of the most sustainable farm products on the market. The carbon footprint of oat protein concentrate is more than 50% lower compared to non-dairy proteins. This is a loaf of oat milk bread. I took my favorite Japanese milk bread recipe and I exchanged the 1 whole cup of milk for 1 whole cup of oat milk. I have to say that the bread turned out pretty good. I did need about 1/4 cup more of oat milk than I have in regular whole milk, period, but the kids didn't notice. So to me, that's a success. This bread is not entirely dairy-free. It does have butter in it, but you can always sub that out for dairy-free butter. I have to say, this was my favorite experimental recipe. I took my go-to white party funfetti cake. I first tried to sub the cake flour for oat flour. It was not good. However, using the oat milk instead of the cup of milk really worked out well. I then tried using this coconut blend flour. It turned out really well, and I didn't notice the difference in the cake. So this cake right here is gluten-free and milk-free. If you need it to be dairy-free, you can sub it the butter for dairy-free butter. This dough you see behind me is made with oat flour. I really wanted to get oat flour to work on my basic sugar cookie recipe, but it just didn't. You could taste the difference. Now, if you don't mind the taste of oat flour and you are gluten-free, it works. It's just a little bit drier. Now, this right here is oat milk pudding. Traditionally, pudding is made with egg yolks, but if you are vegan or dairy-free, this is a great alternative. And when you're done, you can turn them into popsicles. You can see here in this chart that oats have a lot more nutrients than regular wheat flours. Because the oats are higher in protein and fat and all the nutrients below, it makes it so the baked goods are not as fluffy as they would be with all-purpose flour. Next on my list of alternative ingredients is fruit purees. Fruit purees are most commonly used as fat substitutes in baking. Applesauce works well in most cake recipes, muffin, gingerbread, and can replace half the fat in most cookies. Mashed bananas can be used in chocolate cakes, spice cakes, and muffins as well. One last thing about fruit purees is that if it's organic and grown locally, it has the lowest carbon footprint of all of the alternative ingredients. These are apple banana oat muffins. They are gluten-free, they are dairy-free, they are vegan, and they are refined sugar-free. It might sound crazy, but they are delicious and a #1 staple in my house. Now this beauty behind me is an apple and almond cake made with 2 whole pureed oranges and almond flour. Although almond flour does not have the best carbon footprint, it is still better for you than all-purpose flour. This cake is gluten-free and dairy-free, but it does have eggs in it. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my journey with almonds. I was going to choose almond flour and almond milk for one of my alternative ingredients. As you can see, it is very good for you to use almonds and eat almonds in your cooking. However, it is not very good for the environment. Almonds are often considered less environmentally friendly because they require a lot of water to reach maturity. It takes a gallon of water to produce each and every almond. 82% of the world's almonds are produced in California, and as the state continues to battle droughts, you can guess where the finger of blame tends to be pointed. This information does not mean you should not eat almonds. At the end of the day, the production of almonds still takes a significantly lower toll on the environment than any meat production, and the steps are being taken to try to reduce water consumption in the almond production. Can you guess what's next on my list of alternative ingredients? Aquafaba. Aquafaba is the liquid that comes from a can of chickpeas. It has a low to moderate carbon footprint. To make 1 pound of dried chickpeas, you need about 500 grams of water. And in 1 can of chickpeas, you get about 3/4 cups of aquafaba. That makes about 425 grams of aquafaba in the can. This is why we're going to use the aquafaba instead of throwing it away. These right here, my friends, are macarons made with aquafaba. Unfortunately, most of the macarons turned out like this. Luckily, after a lot of tries, I was able to get these beauties right here. Although aquafaba does whip up like an egg white, the proteins and the way they cook are a lot different. So there was a lot of adjustments that had to be made. Check out these aquafaba meringues. They were delicious. Just made with aquafaba, cream of tartar, sugar, and vanilla. And they tasted just like meringues. Thank you for coming on this baking journey with me. It was a blast. For this final project of ours, I sought out ingredients that were not only better for people to eat, but also better for the environment. I chose recipes using oats, fruit, coconut, and aquafaba. I wanted to see how much these basic recipes would change if I used those alternative ingredients. With more waste than I'd like to admit, but a whole lot of baking, I was able to find the best alternative ingredients for these few recipes that I just showed you. The oat flour was the hardest to get the flavor right. The aquafaba was the most nerve-wracking. The oat milk turned out to be the easiest to alternate, and the fruits were the biggest surprise. Although my family and I are fortunate enough not to have any food restrictions or special diet, I will stay on the path to better baking for us and for our planet because every little bite of cake counts.